It'll be fine. Wow. Hi, my name is Ellie H, and I'm a grateful member of the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon and Al-Anon. So Libby had to use the word perfect. So Libby, a quote came to mind that's been in my mind a lot recently, and the quote is, "Perfection is the prerequisite to pain." I have a lot of experience with that. So we're not going there. I also wanted to thank, first of all, the committee for including Al-Anon. It is a family disease, and I love that we have a family solution. Thank Libby for being my hostess, and also to thank the taper. That it's easy to not really notice the taper sitting there in the corner, but having done that myself for many years, I realized they're usually the first person here and the last person to leave. And so, could we give a round of applause to the tapers? And actually, a lot of my recovery has to do with the fact that I spent many years volunteering to sitting in that corner and recording conferences. I got thrown right in the middle of recovery when I walked in. And I needed to be thrown right in the middle of recovery. I did not come in as a young person. I did not come in, I suppose there's right reasons to come in. Probably some of you know what they are. I came in, one of my character defects worked to my benefit. I came in because the person who told me I should go to Al-Anon was someone I wanted to impress. So it's like, okay. I had no clue why I would go to Al-Anon. I was not involved in any relationships with anyone who were dealing or struggling with alcohol use at the time that I got sent to Al-Anon. I can't even tell you that anybody in my life is an alcoholic, because I don't get to decide if somebody's an alcoholic. But I can tell you there were people in my life whose drinking certainly had an impact on me. And that's really all I need to understand to be eligible for Al-Anon. I'm going to just apologize up front too. My mind does not go like, this is what happened, this is what it was like, it just kind of goes where it goes. I never know where it's going to go. I'd always love for God to fill me in before I got up here. And even though I brought a piece of paper up here, it's just what I might remember to read at the end. So, I got sent to Al-Anon. Actually, next weekend would be 24 years that I've been since I've been an active member of Al-Anon. And thank you. If you're those of you who aren't members of Al-Anon might be curious about how in the heck do you determine how long you've been in Al-Anon. I mean, you all know in AA when you had your last drink. And if the criteria was, when did I have my last controlling thought or manipulative thought or obsessive thought, well, nobody'd ever get, a week. What I consider is that I've been an active member in Al-Anon from the day I arrived. It just so happens in Minnesota, it's not true this year for the very first time, but for 35 years in Minnesota over Labor Day weekend, there was a statewide Al-Anon conference. And I ended up in the rooms of Al-Anon in late August and was in a meeting. I was told one thing by this person who sent me to Al-Anon. See, I'm already here. I haven't told you what it was like, but we might. So, what I was told when I was sent to Al-Anon is look for a meeting that's focused on the solution. And that was enough for me to understand what I was looking for. And this particular meeting, they talked about sponsorship, they talked about service, they talked about participating in this conference. And although I really didn't understand, especially in the beginning, why I was there, or even that I was eligible to be there, I felt something that I could not have named at the time. And I hope this is your experience in recovery too. I felt hope. And I walked into that meeting hopeless and desperate, which is actually, in my opinion, a really good way to arrive somewhere. Well, it was for me, because prior to that, I really wasn't interested in doing something that I couldn't figure out how it was going to work, when it was going to work, and why it was going to work. And I used to think I was teachable. None of those things are the criteria for being teachable. But that's how I was when I ended up. And so they mentioned, like Libby's just talking about the conference here, they mentioned there was going to be a conference in a few weeks. And I decided I would go. So I ended up, in a place where there was recovery. And like I said, I needed it. So why did I get sent to Al-Anon? Here's what I know. I grew up in a family that, way back in the 50s, my mom was a divorced mom in a small town, and she was the only divorced mom in this small town. We probably all have some idea in our head about why we think we're different and why we think we're defective. And I apparently gathered that information early on. So that just kind of added to it. In my family, I don't look like anybody else in the family. They all have brown hair, brown eyes. I have blue eyes still. I do not have red hair any longer, but I did not look like them, and the family joke was I was adopted, which I'm not. So I didn't look like them. I didn't feel like I fit into the family, and I, right away, especially with divorced parents, just felt everybody knew there was something wrong with me. And one of the things I've learned along the way is that what I do is I gather evidence of what I believe to be true. I don't notice if anybody says something nice when I think I'm defective or unlovable, which is what I did think. If somebody would come up and say something nice to me, I would just figure I fooled you, that you didn't really know what was going on inside of me. So I was somebody who got really good at putting on an act to make it look like I was okay. And being in a family where there was a mom and 4 kids, and I was the oldest daughter, my mom as a single mom, had to go to work. She had a couple of jobs to support the family. And so it appeared to me, and of course none of this is conscious, but it appeared to me the role of parent was open in my family. And I took that over. I mean, from 8 years old, I've been the responsible one. And I was the one who was making sure my young sister got home from kindergarten. I was the one, as time went on, who was pacing the floor at night, making sure my mom got home from wherever she was out playing cards or whatever she was doing. So I grew up with a bunch of beliefs that weren't true. One was that I was defective. Another one was I was responsible for everybody. And the third one, it's probably a much longer list, but what's coming to me now is that if I knew where everybody was, then I would be okay. If I could take care of everybody, then I would be okay. And that's a great prerequisite for getting into relationships with people who needed to be taken care of. And I found a lot of them along the way. And if you're somebody who doesn't think you have value, one of the ways that I thought I got my value was to care for you. And the way I got noticed in my home was to take care of people. And that's what gave me some ability to function in the world. So, the other thing about my family that is still true today, although none of them would ever say this out loud, but everybody believes in something. Everybody has faith in something. My family did not have faith in any religious beliefs. My family did not have faith in God. My family, in fact, would say people who believed in God were weak. And they probably also thought they were stupid, because what we thought in my family and what carried me until the time I got here is I would figure things out. Now, I've been told that's not an Al-Anon slogan, I'll figure this out. But that is really how I proceeded in life, because it's the only tool that I had in my toolkit, was to get the right information. And I failed at that. There's an inordinate number of high degrees in my particular family, because that's still kind of what people are looking to as the solution to living, to the solution for how does it feel so bad, or why is it so hard to be here. So that's what I had as my resources. So I'm making it look pretty good. I've become a very good fraud. I've been told recently that when I was in college, I went to a small college. There were 5 sororities in the college. Every single sorority recruited me because if I'm with you, I look just like you. And apparently that was an unusual thing to have happen. But I was really good at just fitting in. I was really good at pleasing. I was really good at trying to get your approval so that I would be okay. So what I'm telling you is really my well-being was determined by everybody else. That what I thought about me was, well, I thought I was broken. I thought I was unlovable. And so I needed you to affirm me. But then when you did, I just figured I'd tricked you. So you can see how I wasn't having a good time. And my first job out of college, I was a social worker. So, I mean, what could be better than that than to get paid to fix people? So, I mean, that's already what I was spending all of my time doing. And it's, you know, somehow I think those of us that were in the helping profession think that you can just talk enough, help people figure stuff out in their brain, and that will change. That has not been my experience. But you know, the other thing is people who go into the helping profession really do care, and my intention was to help people. It's just that I didn't understand the problem. That, guess what? I believe all of us in this room have the same problem because we're practicing the same 12 steps. And the problem is there's a limit to human power. When I got sent to Al-Anon, I had had enough life experience to really accept that was the problem. That there was a limit to my power because I had spent many, many years. I mean, I didn't come here till I was in my mid-40s. I'd spent many, many years either as a profession or just as a person, you know, out there in the world or in my family, trying to change and help and fix people. And it became very clear that I had limited ability to do that. And I think it's true for all of us. So didn't have a problem with step one, the first part of step one. Okay, the problem is there's a limit to my power. I couldn't tell you that I really saw the unmanageability in my life because I was not really paying attention to my life. I was paying attention to what did you think about me, and that determined my life. A woman who's still my friend, who was my friend years before I got into Al-Anon and is still in my life, I asked her at one point if she really knew what kind of trouble I was in emotionally, because the facade starts to crack over a period of time. If really inside the light is going out and your spirit is not being attended to. And what she said to me, she knew I was being sent to Al-Anon. What she said to me is, she said, if Al-Anon didn't work, I was going to ask you to go check yourself into a psych unit. So there apparently was some evidence that the facade was cracking. I'm happy to report that Al-Anon did work. And Al-Anon worked because I'll go back to, I feel like I was desperate. And I started to take action, and I did things that I didn't understand. But what I could see is that you all had something that I desperately wanted. I mean, don't you think it's strange when you go into your first recovery meeting and there's people there talking about this horrific life experiences and they're smiling, you know, and they're laughing, and it's like, what is wrong with these people? Don't you understand? This is serious. It's only serious if you don't understand what it is, and it's only serious if you don't have a solution. And so there's something attractive, very attractive, about being in a room full of people who are actually engaged, actually actively engaged in practicing these principles. And so, as I said, I came in late August. The state Al-Anon conference was a few weeks later. I went to that conference, and of course I didn't tell anybody I was going. I didn't talk to anybody. I went and sat in the back row, and one of the women from that meeting that I had gone to, in fact, when I went to the conference and, you know, they ask you what your meeting is, I had no idea what the name of that meeting was. It's like I wasn't really able to comprehend much other than I knew I needed help. One of the women from that meeting saw me in the back of the room and came back and sat with me. And I think it's probably the very first time in my life I felt like I don't have to do this alone anymore. that when you listen to people speak in our meetings and speak at the podium, they talk about things that I didn't hear anybody else talk about. I mean, I know who that first Al-Anon speaker was that I heard at that first conference, and I just could not believe that she was saying out loud how I felt on the inside, and I didn't even know how I felt on the inside until I heard somebody else speak about it. And the wall cracked even more, and I left that conference. Of course, I wasn't going to let anybody see me cry, and I just went home and cried, I don't know for how long. But I knew that somehow I didn't have to do this by myself, which is an incredible gift. I mean, and I think recovery is counterculture. We have a self-reliant culture, and certainly that was true in my family. And to know that I didn't have to pretend, that I could in fact let you see how flawed I was, and that you wouldn't run away. I mean, the personal relationships I had prior to Al-Anon, even people I married, it's like I wasn't allowed to be sick. I mean, my job was to take care of you, and I would pick people that wanted to be taken care of, and if I wasn't able to take care of them, then they weren't really particularly interested in being with me. I'm somebody who's had a couple of failed marriages. Possibly, if I'd known and gotten into Al-Anon sooner, that marriage where there was a lot of drinking might have had a different outcome. I mean, I don't know that there's any hope if there's a relationship. This is just my experience. By the way, it's very clear I don't represent Al-Anon. I can only represent my experience in recovery. I don't know how, unless the denial works indefinitely. But it just got too hard. That second marriage with the person who drank a lot, we started to live in different realities. If you've ever, I think it's still on, I saw it just recently, Star Trek is still on. And if you've ever watched Star Trek, they used to have a holodeck where you could go and create your total own experience. Well, we lived on different holodecks, my husband and I. And I thought I was the crazy one. Because when you're with somebody who's using, or even if they're not using, but they probably would do better if they were, you all are very sure of your opinion of things. And no matter how much I think I have logic and information on my side, you never waver, and you're just brilliant at explaining things. Like, let's just say I was having a conversation about the color of Libby's shirt there, and I'm pretty sure most of us would think it's in the red-orange family, but my husband would be saying, no, it's really blue, and the reason I think it's red-orange is the angle of the light shining on the shirt, and I mean, it's just like you guys are so amazing at explaining your point of view. And so sooner or later, if you're with somebody who's basically telling you your reality isn't what's happening, you start to think you don't know what's happening. At least that's what happened to me. That I just totally gave up any sense of me. That I was going down, and it was becoming apparent to other people. I don't really know how anybody ultimately feels any sense of peace of mind unless they have some knowledge and some relationship with a higher power. I mean, I don't know how you do it. So I mentioned early on, and for the first probably 15 years, I was very active in going out and probably got to 10 strong AA Al-Anon conferences a year. And although I did not come in looking for a higher power, I was probably quite resistant to the idea of a higher power. I had already accepted the fact that there was a limit to my power. And every conference I went to, it didn't matter what people's story was, how they looked, what their background was, how many years they had in recovery. They all seemed to think that there was one solution. And they all seemed to be very clear that that solution was to form a relationship with a power greater than human power. And I needed to be in that situation and hear people say that over and over to finally let it start to come in. Again, it's a good idea to be desperate and to have no other ideas. I was totally out of ideas by the time I got here. So I got a sponsor because I wanted because I wanted to change, because I was sick and tired, because I could not continue. I'll tell you one more story. Couple months before I got sent to Al-Anon, I had some lumps in my breast, and my doctor immediately wanted to do surgery because she had just had a patient presenting like I did, and that patient had died, and so it was like, you know, you got to go have surgery. But if you grow up in a family with a lot of, well, overeducated people, you know, you never take the first opinion, and you go consult with other doctors, and so I'm in the process of doing that. And this power that I had no relationship with, you know, we have moments of clarity. Sometimes you know what to do with it, sometimes you don't. But as I'm going through this process of deciding what to do with my physical well-being, I heard, I can't tell you that it was an actual voice, but I heard, if it's too hard to be here, this is an acceptable way to die. And some part of me that I didn't have much of a relationship with said, I want to live, but I don't know how. And that was probably April, May, and so by August I'm in Al-Anon. I had no idea that was the answer to learn how to live. So I'm in Al-Anon, I get a sponsor. My first sponsor, unbeknownst to me, was in AA and Al-Anon, and she, unbeknownst to me, had never sponsored somebody in Al-Anon before, and she didn't know what to do with me. Unbeknownst to me, it was good she never told me any of this until years later. And so this is not a typical Al-Anon experience, but it's my experience, and I'm very grateful for it. She took me to the big book. And what she had me do was I was given a daily assignment, and I know it's in the stories in the back that there's a paragraph on acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. And I was told to read that every single day. And it's kind of clear that I was fighting everything. You don't send people there who are at peace. And you know, it still kind of bugs me that is the answer. It's like, it's always the answer. No matter what is going on, if I'm fighting it, I'm just giving it more energy. So I started really engaging and practicing the principles. As I said, I'm out at these conferences, I'm hearing what the solution is. And so when I get to step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, I knew that there was something more powerful than human power. I had no relationship with it, but for me, nature is such a clear example that there's something more powerful going on the planet. So I didn't fight that part of it. The idea about being restored to sanity, you know, all I could think of is that would mean I'd get a clinical diagnosis, and probably if I'd gone and talked to someone, they would have given me one. But I didn't do that. I love how this program works and how the message comes to us. I was in a meeting really pretty early on, and you know, there's sometimes people in meetings that annoy you just a little bit, or you just don't open up to right away. And it was one of those people who said something about step 2 that opened me up. And she said, you know, the classic thing we say, the insanity is just doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And she said, what I've come to understand insanity is telling myself things that aren't true. And that really resonated with me, because all of a sudden, and continues to be true, it gets revealed to me what I'm telling myself that's not true. And it was either some version of I should be different, you should be different, or it should be different. And she gently pointed out to me, that means you're playing God. Like, I know what's supposed to happen. I even know how I'm supposed to be. And so that's my go-to question these days. When I get disturbed, when something's bugging me, it's always, what am I telling myself that's not true? And that's where the answer is. There are many times where I'm so attached to what I'm telling myself that I need to call a sponsor or another member or talk about it in a meeting so somebody can give me a different perspective. And where my, I'm sorry, I just jumped to what comes into my brain. I was talking about a different perspective. What's really the other thing that's been my go-to in recent months is I do believe addiction, and I had an addiction to people, if not to chemicals, is a disease of perception. And I do think that my problem always is how I'm looking at what's going on. So my go-to much more consistently is when I'm troubled by you or I'm troubled by anything, I just ask Spirit to give me a different way to see this. And I don't even have to get an answer, but just asking for that help relieves a lot of the pressure of figuring things out. That I've become much more willing on a consistent basis to go to that power. So, step 2, what am I telling myself that's not true? Has worked really well for me, continues to work really well for me. And so I continued, the decision in step 3, the really good news is you don't have to figure out how you're going to live that decision. It's just, am I going to make the decision to move towards the solution? Am I going to move towards a relationship with that power? It's yes or no. And then the good news is there's a bunch of other steps. They're numbered in order, and they tell you, if you take those steps, it shows you how to live that decision. I couldn't have said that at the time, but again, because I just need to get free of how hard it is to be me, I made that decision, didn't look back, and went right into a 4-step inventory. I did it before I think they'd even talked about it in a meeting, so I didn't know I should be scared. I just did it. And it revealed to me, and I had gone to counseling, and I was a social worker. I had a lot of really good information. I just had no idea what was running my life was fear. And I had no idea that the way to get free of that was to believe that there's something that cares for me, that will carry me through whatever happens in my life. So I'm doing this inventory, and I start to understand the problem with me is I have the human condition. The problem with me is I'm limited and flawed, and the problem with me is I'm fighting that. And it got very clear that, whatever I put down for a resentment, whatever fear I had, whatever harms I had done to other people, it was all because my instincts were being threatened. That's the problem. And your instincts are threatened if you don't know who you are. And I did not know who I was. It took me a long time. Hopefully I remember to come back to step 4, but I'm going to go to a conference that I went to where it was one of those, I love how this program works, and the things that you just really resist doing are often where the biggest gifts are. So I was filling in for a taper and going to a conference in South Dakota. There was a family wedding. My family's all mad that I'm leaving and going to this conference, but the other guy had a heart attack, and so I was like, oh, okay, fine, I'll go. Not really happy about it, but I'll go. And then I get there, and it's a small little conference, or a small little hotel, and it's been raining all day. And they give me a place to set up my stuff. And just as I'm setting up, the rain kind of comes through the roof, and the roof comes down on my table. And so it's like I'm not having a good time. And the good news is I'm now willing to be honest about what's going on. And so I found somebody to talk to, and they reminded me why I was there. And it's just like, you can get turned around really quickly if you get restored to what's really important. And what's really important is to be of service. So why did I bring that up? I have no idea. Maybe it helped somebody. So going back to the 4th step. The big discovery for me is instead of having the 4th step be evidence that there's something really wrong with you, it just revealed to me why it was so challenging, because I was trying to get above the human condition. That perfection thing was exactly the right thing to say, because that has been what's caused me so much pain. The idea that the only way I'll be acceptable, the only way I'll be lovable, is to not ever make a mistake. That's not doable here with the human condition. So I got to understand that we have human instincts, and when fear is running your life, they get out of balance, and you start to put your energy on things that you have no power over. The other thing that got revealed to me really clearly is how deceitful I had become. I had cash register honesty. I was not somebody that would cheat you out of money. You know, if you give me the wrong change, in fact, it happened really recently, and I think people are still surprised. It's like, no, you know, I would do that. But my level of dishonesty is I would never tell you how I was feeling. I mean, because you might not want to know that I'm unhappy, or you might not want to know that you've done something that hurt my feelings. And so my whole relationships were really based on what I thought you wanted me to say or do or be. And that got really clear. And what that does, even if you don't know it, is it erodes your sense of well-being because you're not in integrity, and at some level you know you're living a lie. I'm saying this, you know, in hindsight. I had no idea, but what I did know and what got revealed to me is that my relationships were built on lies. I can remember the very first time where I had something to say to a friend that I didn't think she was going to want to hear, and I mean, I was literally nauseous, that I could not imagine saying something to somebody that they might not like. And I rehearsed it with my sponsor. I knew I was going to say it in a kind way. I wasn't going to point fingers and say you. I was going to talk about me and my feelings, and still it was just terrifying. But you know, it's the only way you can have a real relationship with anyone and have a real relationship with yourself is to have that level of honesty. How God helped me really get clear about being honest, because one of my gifts, and it's also the thing that doesn't work well for me, is that I seem to be credible sometimes. And so I can look you in the face and lie to you, and you're going to believe me. So, but I'm not doing that now. So, I'm outside my home group. It's a nice summer night. We're waiting to go into the meeting, and so I live in Minnesota, somebody's getting ready to take a trip to Wisconsin. And I start to give them directions on how to get there. And in the middle of this, I realize I have no idea what I'm talking about. And so I have to stop and say, I'm making that all up. You should have seen the look on their faces. But it's like, as you start to wake up, you start to get honest. And it's like, that was enough disclosure in front of people who would hold me accountable that started to move me in a direction of, can't do that anymore. You know, it's a process for me. It continues to be a process of healing, of getting free of the things that I've told myself that weren't true. It's a process of healing relationships. When I got here, my relationship with myself was broken. My relationship with the people in my life was broken. And I had no relationship with a higher power or God. And for me, the first relationship that got healed, although I think it was God in the background the whole time, was my relationship with myself. I know why I told you about that conference where the roof fell down. I heard somebody say something at that conference that my eyes rolled. I mean, I rolled my eyes a lot when I got here because it's like what you were saying can't possibly be right. And he said a prayer. It was at the end of his talk, and he said, this is what he said. He said, God, show me the truth about myself, no matter how beautiful it might be. And I just thought, I mean, that was such a crazy idea that the truth about me would be beautiful. And here's the thing, it's the truth about every single person. You cannot, no matter what you've done, no matter what harms you've done, no matter how many lies you've told or how bad your acting has been, you can't destroy the truth of who you are, which is God's kid, which is a spiritual being. You can start to put out the flame, which is, I think, what I was doing with all those years of not connecting to that power. But that, I said to myself, I now know this is not going to work well, but I said to myself I'd never say that prayer. Well, as soon as I put never into something, you know what's going to happen. You know, it took years, but eventually that prayer floated back into my consciousness, and I know that that's truth. I know that I'm God's kid, and I know it's true for every person that I sit with or talk to. And I think that that's the most amazing gift we could ever get, is to have that kind of healing, to understand that there's a way to get free of the lies, there's a way to get free of the things we've told ourselves, and there's a way to heal our relationships with other people. And so this year has been about healing relationships, more relationships. I did my amends fairly quickly, and I did one amend for the wrong reasons that didn't get revealed to me until this year. I have a sister that I'm estranged from that I could never get her approval. She never got her approval. And she lives in another part of the country, and so she just didn't have much to do with our family. And it kind of bugged me, but I didn't seem to be able to do anything about it, even though, I'm not going there. Okay, so I was going to explain to you how good I'd been to her. That's really not the point. So it was 2 years ago, she came to visit in Minnesota for some reason. I think it was an older family member's birthday. I can't remember what got her here. But she stayed at my house for a couple of days, and it just so happened that particular night I was going to hear a talk on forgiveness. And I knew she had told me during this visit that she had not ever forgiven me for something that had happened when we were kids. I don't know what it was. And I invited her to come to this talk with me, and she wasn't interested. So I went, and my intention and my desire has been to forgive her, but I just wasn't. I wish there was a formula for a lot of things. You say this, you turn around twice, you get on your knees, and boom, it's gone. And I was always looking for the right, there is a formula for recovery, I take that back. So I've been struggling with how to get free, because the thing is, I really fully believe when I'm judging someone or I'm carrying unforgiveness, I'm paying the price. And she seemed to be content with the way the relationship was. And so wouldn't you know, a couple months ago I was in a meeting and we were talking about forgiveness, and it became clear to me that the reason I was struggling so much in forgiving her is I hadn't forgiven her for not forgiving me. It's like I could finally name what it was that I was holding on to. And when I get to those things, I easily go back to step one. It's like, do I have power over that? No. Is it creating unmanageability? Yes. Do I want to be free of that? Do I want to give that over? And so that's what gave me the freedom from that. But it's like, this is 20-some years into this, and I had a pretty unrealistic idea of what recovery would be. For one thing, I figured it would be about a 12-week course, 12 steps. I'm a good student, I'll do them, I'll be out of here. Because there's no frame of reference for lifelong learning in our education system anyhow, or I didn't have a reference for that. And so, as far as I know, there's nobody in front of me that I haven't forgiven. And I trust that it gets revealed at the time where I'm able to do it, if in fact there's more to do. Right now, I'm just busy with noticing when I'm judging. My level of awareness is much higher, and it's not disturbing me like it used to be. And I have a choice. I'll give you an example. I'd love if somebody's had their ego go away. I mean, I know this is about ego deflation, but if you've actually gotten totally free of your ego, please come and see me after this. But what happens to me, and I've said this to Libby, it's not something I enjoy doing, speaking in front of people. But because it was so important to me to hear people's stories, I say yes. But my ego starts to chatter away as I'm driving here, or I'm up in my room, and it's like, I hope I say something that I hope I look good, or I hope this, or it's like, and eventually I hear myself saying that, and then I can get restored to the truth. That's insanity, to be telling yourself, this is about me impressing you. This is about God hopefully working through me, that something might be said that will open somebody's heart. That's it. I used to know what people needed to hear. I used to write, scripts. I used to practice them. And it's so clear to me that God is so much bigger and so much wiser and has resources I couldn't even imagine. One of the sayings, another recovery friend gave me, and it sort of fits with this, my current practice, is when God's involved, I can't imagine what's possible. And I think that's absolutely true. But I still spend a lot of my time trying to figure things out or how to solve problems. And this asking for a new perception or a new way to see things, I highly recommend it. Because then it invites God in. Even though I was saying, when God's involved, I can't imagine the possibilities, I wasn't acting that way. I wasn't practicing that in my life day to day. And so that's my current practice. I know I could talk longer, but I'm waiting to see if there's anything else that feels relevant. So I think I will end. I did bring up a poem, because this poem, for me in a nutshell, is how I intend to continue to live my life, and it tells me really why I'm here. It's called Anyway, and I heard this in a recovery meeting somewhere along the way. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have. It may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Thank you.